Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast. We are back with another episode of Let's Talk About It. We are officially in that offseason mode, but it's time to look back at this past NBA season and kind of give every NBA team a grade based on this season. This is going to be focusing on the Western Conference. The Eastern Conference video should already be up on the channel. Make sure you go show that some love. If you're an audio listener, make sure to give the podcast 5 stars. It helps out a ton. If you're on YouTube watching this, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. We're going to be posting all kinds of NBA offseason content. I got another mock draft I got 2 more mock drafts in the work before the NBA draft next Wednesday and Thursday. So without further ado, we can hop right into grading every Western Conference team's NBA season. Starting out, number 1, OKC Thunder, obviously an A+. I mean, this team is way ahead of schedule for how young they are, 57-25, almost getting to the conference finals, losing to a Dallas Mavericks team that would end up going to the NBA finals. Looking at this OKC team, you got a team that I feel like fits perfectly together in what they want to do. I feel like Shea, J-Dub, Chet all fit well together, and role players like Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, and I think Josh Giddey's really, and Lou Dort, and I think Josh Giddey's really the only odd man out at this point. I just feel like he doesn't really fit what they want to do because he is more off the ball with OKC, when I feel like he's somebody that needs the ball to really do what he wants to do and do what he does best. So I feel like he's going to be out the door this offseason. One thing I definitely want to see this team do, I would love to see them go add maybe a veteran off that bench. I feel like there is times where like this team just kind of showed their youthfulness and youngness when they were playing the Dallas Mavericks. And I do definitely think they should go add maybe a wing off that bench, maybe a bigger wing, and maybe try to go add that big. I know they're in the market for like an Isaiah Hartenstein, possibly like a Jared Allen in the realm. They have all the assets to go make it work, but I feel like this OKC team is taking it the right way and the right approach, and they're not just going to go out and make moves just because they have capital. They're going to get the right fitting pieces for this team. I would love to see OKC get somebody like a Kelly Ware in the draft. I feel like he can kind of give them possibly the spacing that they would like to have and put Chet at the 4. Or they could go in free agency and possibly pay somebody like an Isaiah Hartenstein, who I feel like fits this team perfectly. He's a bigger body who can be a dominant force on the glass, and you still have that spacing and ability to be versatile and put Chet at the 5 like they did this year if they need more spacing depending on who they're playing. But I'm going to give this overall OKC team, overall grade, A+, obviously. Denver Nuggets, give it a B. I think it's hard to kind of go back-to-back, especially when you run into the only team in the Western Conference that I feel like could beat you. I think the Minnesota Timberwolves were tailor-made to be the Denver Nuggets, and I feel like you see how the same things that worked for the Minnesota Timberwolves and how they were built to beat Denver killed them when they came to play Dallas. And I feel like that whole series kind of tanked out Minnesota to where they went into the conference finals really, really gassed. But when you're looking at the Denver Nuggets, hard to go back-to-back. I'm not going to put any flack on them for not getting back to the finals and beating the Boston Celtics. Jamal Murray was banged up through the playoffs. KCP was banged up through the playoffs. Still a very, very solid year. He finished as a 2 seed, 57-25. Nikola Jokic added another MVP. I'm going to give it a B. I don't really think it's a disappointing year at all with how hard it is in the NBA to go back-to-back with how talented the league is. So I'm going to give it a B. One thing I want to see them do, they have to get something off that bench. They have to get something off that bench, because I think they need to go get more consistent shooting off the bench, because when you're looking at that bench, Christian Braun is great for what they want to do, but he consistently isn't the shooter that they really need off the bench. Peyton Watson isn't either, but I feel like they just have no real shooting coming off that bench, and I feel like in an offseason where you could lose KCP, you need to go find a way to add some more shooting. I really, really like Baylor Shireman to them. He's somebody that's NBA ready, that can play in multiple positions for them, can shoot the ball, can handle, kind of be that, like, if you guys remember, like Joe Ingles in Utah in a way, where he was kind of that vet, that when Donovan Mitchell was like more on the rookie and younger side of things, he was kind of that vet that could really take control of the offense and be kind of that like point forward in a way. I feel like Baylor Shineman can come in the door and be a floor spacing guy like that, like Joe Ingles, that can come in and really be able to handle the ball, defend a little bit, rebound a little bit, and be able to space the floor for this Denver Nuggets team. Overall, I'm going to give it a B. Not too disappointed in them for not going back-to-back. I still think it's a good year for them. I think it could be a bounce-back spot for them next year if they really see what they need to do with this roster. But they ran into the team that was tailor-made to beat them, so I'm not going to put entire F grade on Denver Nuggets for not going back-to-back and winning another title. Next team, Minnesota Timberwolves. A-. I mean, The only thing I would say keeping this team from a higher grade and giving them like an A+, it's kind of the way they went out against the Dallas Mavericks. I was really expecting classic of a series, and I feel like they kind of were so gassed and taxed out from the Denver Nuggets series going 7 games to where they kind of came out flat in that Dallas series, and once they went down early, it was kind of over with from there. Culture changing year for the organization, kind of what I talked about with the Pacers in a way. When people would look at Minnesota, it was like they are so satisfied being just middle of the pack in the Western Conference. And I feel like this is a year to where like they have changed that entire narrative about them, mainly through the play of Anthony Edwards. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with the second apron and what they have with Cat, Edwards, McDaniels, and Gobert. I feel like this roster definitely needs to add some shooting, but all in all, from this season alone, super, super successful year. I mean, you handled the Phoenix Suns. You beat the reigning champion Denver Nuggets on their own floor in Game 7 after being down 20 at half. You end up losing to the Dallas Mavericks. It's okay. I think it's still a successful year. You get to the conference finals. Minnesota, many people didn't even think Minnesota could get past Phoenix Suns at the start of the playoffs. So I'm going to say this is a very successful year. One thing I want to see them do, and what I've kind of mocked in some trades that I've done on the channel, is look into the realm of possibly trading Karl-Anthony Towns. I'm not saying they have to do it. Looking to the realm of it, because I feel like this team needs maybe another real shot creator on the perimeter. And when you have somebody like Naz Reid, who kind of outplayed Karl-Anthony Towns throughout the entire playoff run, I feel like he's somebody who could step in and then trade Karl-Anthony Towns to help you out more so on the perimeter. Because there's a lot of times in the playoffs where like I'm looking at this Minnesota Timberwolves team and it's like, if it's not Anthony Edwards creating something on offense, this team's offense is really, really bad. They were a middle-of-the-pack offense for that most of the year. They've been hanging the hat on the defensive side of the ball, which I like to see. But I feel like they have to go into this offseason, maybe not looking to, we have to trade Karl-Anthony Towns, but looking and seeing what's out there on the market. I know they're a second apron team. Maybe you can try to be more flexible and upgrade the roster in a different way that suits your needs, because I feel like Naz Reid can kind of give you what Karl-Anthony Towns is giving you, plus better defense. And you can go add whatever you get for Karl-Anthony Towns to help you out in your needs on the perimeter offensively. But overall, I'm going to give this Minnesota Timberwolves grade an A-. Number 4, LA Clippers. 51-31, obviously a disappointing year. I'm going to give them overall grade a D. Just another year of disappointment and injuries when you least want to expect them. I feel like there was a point in time where they got James Harden, where they were bad at the start, and then they just turned it complete 180 and really turned this whole season around and made you think once again, I was one of them. I kind of took the bait, and I was like, man, Clippers are looking good right now. They're looking really, really, really good right now. And then what do you know? Get to the playoffs, one injury here, Kawhi Leonard hurt once again. They go out to the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas Mavericks ended up going to the finals. Kawhi Leonard was hurt. It's just the same story. The story never changes. It's always the same thing with this Clippers team. I want to give them a D. I'm going to give them a D. But the one thing I look at when I see the Clippers, I'm just like, man, if I'm Ty Lue, man, I mean, at what point is enough enough? Ty Lue, one of the best coaches in all of basketball, and it's like every year he has to work with less because of an injury or something. Not saying it's on the player's fault or anything else like that, but I'm like, I like Ty Lue as a coach, I really do. But it's like every year, it's just like injury here, injury there. It's like one year Paul George is hurt, and if Paul George was healthy, you're like, man, they might have beat Phoenix. And all of a sudden, Kawhi Leonard gets hurt on the playoff run as well. And it's like, this year, it's like Kawhi Leonard gets hurt when they felt like they had it rolling with James Harden for once. Like, it's just another disappointing year for the LA Clippers. I just don't, when you go into this offseason, like, one thing I want to see them do is, like, maybe you need to look at getting younger. Like, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are getting nothing but older. I'm not saying you move Kawhi Leonard, but it looks like you're going to be on the track to moving Paul George because you haven't extended him. So looking at that, maybe the Clippers are possibly looking in a realm to where, like, they kind of turn the page and look to get younger. Maybe you still bring back James Harden, but maybe without having Paul George, it opens up the ability for you to have some cap room. So to really make the roster look a little different, I think they just need a roster change, a roster flip up. I think they definitely need to get younger and more athletic. This is an older team that's kind of aged themselves out of their prime of their players because they haven't been able to get over the hump in the playoffs and get it done, mainly just due to injuries. Every single time and every year the Clippers have been in the playoffs, one of the starters has been hurt. The one year I thought that they were going to get over the hump and do it was when they lost to the Suns in the conference finals, and Kawhi Leonard got hurt in the second round series versus Utah. I thought that was the one year where if the Clippers made it to the finals and they were fully healthy, they would have beat the Bucks. Like that, like the one year I had my most hope in the Clippers was that year, and I feel like every year past then is like one of Paul George or Kawhi Leonard is healthy, and I kind of see both sides in the Paul George situation, which I kind of talked about in the free agency predictions video. Like if you're Paul George and wanting an extension, if you're the Clippers, why would I give it to you? Like, understand Paul George is a great player. I'm not saying he's declining at all, but you're getting up there in age and already showing injury concerns. I see both sides of it. I understand it's Paul George, but the Clippers have to look at the future at some point. And I feel like this might be an offseason where they don't blow everything up because they have a new arena and that's just not the direction they should go in. But looking at this, they possibly need to try to reshape the roster and get younger. I'm going to give it overall grade a D, though. Very disappointing year for the Clippers. Number 5, Dallas Mavericks. Obviously going to get an A from me. Ran into a great Boston Celtics team that I feel like was matched up and built perfectly for them to kind of neutralize what the Dallas Mavericks do well in terms of how Luka and Kyrie utilize being switched onto other guards that can't guard them. But exceeding expectations when you look at before the playoffs, this Mavs team making it to the finals, it was always like, oh, that'd be cool, that'd be fire. Who had them going to the finals? I did. And I had them matching up with the Boston Celtics. I had them beating the Denver Nuggets in the conference finals, not the Minnesota Timberwolves. But I did have this Mavericks team going to the finals because I feel like when you pair Luka and Kyrie up in the playoffs, dangerous things can happen. They just ran into a juggernaut of a team that's perfectly matched up and built to neutralize a team like Dallas and what Dallas does well in terms of switches and everything else like that. And I feel like it wasn't really a series that they could go into and really find any rhyme way to win. I feel like Boston just was better at every facet than the Dallas Mavericks in this series. But I'm going to get it an A. Obviously exceeding expectations going to the finals. I mean, you beat OKC, the Clippers, and the Minnesota Timberwolves, like 3 great, phenomenal teams, even though the Clippers were hurt, but you beat a young OKC team that was the 1 seed. Then you beat the 3 seed. So, like, looking at the Dallas Mavericks, they are in a good spot. They probably should look to extend Kyrie Irving. I know I want to say he's a free agent in 2025, but they definitely should look to extend him, get him wrapped up long term, because I like what they have with him and Luka. I think they really need to go add some real shooting. That's the one thing I want to see them do. Go add real shooting. I feel like PJ Washington's a good shooter, but he's streaky. I think they have a bunch of guys that are streaky shooters, and you saw it could either win you a series or it could lose you a series. When you look at PJ Washington and what he did against OKC Thunder, that wins you a series. But then you turn the page and then he goes against the Boston Celtics, a whole different team, mind you, obviously. That shooting wasn't there. None of the shooting was there for the Dallas Mavericks all playoff long to the finals. That shooting wasn't there. They need to go get more consistent shooting because I feel like the shooting and the spacing is what makes this entire offense work. It makes the lob work so people can't clog the paint. It makes the drive and kick one more work. So, like, if they can go out and add some more consistent shooting, I feel like they're going to be in a better position. One name, I think, because they have a lot of flexible contracts to make some money work, I would see what the market is for, like, a Klay Thompson, a bigger wing that could just be playing him with Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. Him on the wing can add you that another shooting option next to a streaky shooter like a PJ Washington and other guys they have coming off the bench. I feel like it's going to be an interesting offseason for them. But one thing I want to see them do, you have the bigs for the future. You have Kyrie and Luka, obviously. You need to go add just a little bit more shooting. I think you'll be fine. Number 6, Phoenix Suns, 49-33. Definitely a disappointing season. I'm going to give it a D- for how sad they did go out to the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's been so long ago, I'm pretty sure that they ended up getting swept, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, they got swept. I could be wrong. It feels like that first round of the playoffs felt like years ago. So, like, looking at this, very disappointing year. Obviously a D-. One thing I want to see them do, go get a true point guard, because I feel like Devin Booker it's a lot of weight on his shoulders to try to get everybody else involved and also be damn near the lead scoring guard for them, other than KD, depending on what night KD's having. So like, looking at this very disappointing season, this roster is just incomplete. This is just a bad, like, them trading for Bradley Beal really hindered them and what they could possibly do with this roster. They need to go get a true point guard. That's what they need to do. I would see if possibly the Warriors get rid of Chris Paul, seeing what that future is like for him, because he can be somebody that they can get on a really, really buy low contract to try to add that point guard that they desperately need. And they need to go address the big in the draft. They have the 23rd overall pick, which I think that at this position, you either draft a more NBA-ready guy, or you have to trade that pick to go try to bring in assets that you need. So looking at that, very disappointing season for the Suns and the ending for sure. But you still have that big three. You got to hope Bradley Beal is a better fit and more healthy next year. So like, that's the whole thing with this team: health and fit. They need to get the right fitting pieces around this roster. But I'm gonna give it a D- just because of how sad they went out at the end. Number 7, the Pelicans. Just another midseason for this team. I feel like I've kind of harped on this a little bit with the Pelicans before. They're looking to trade Brandon Ingram this offseason because they don't want to extend him. But it's kind of like the Clippers. Whenever I feel like this Pelicans team is turning a corner, Zion gets hurt. Brandon Ingram gets hurt. The one year where they made it to the playoffs and really showed me something was with Brandon Ingram leading the way against the Phoenix Suns. And they got handled in that series. Like, every time I think this Pelicans team is turning the corner, one of Brandon Ingram or Zion gets hurt. And now I like that they're going in a direction to where they're moving off of a Brandon Ingram to try to get maybe a better point guard to pair with Zion, or to try to get somebody better fitting in the front court to pair with Zion. So looking at that, I'm going to give it a C. I'm going to give it a C because I just feel like this is right in the middle of season for the New Orleans Pelicans. This is just another season where injuries kind of determine the outcome of what happened to you guys in the end. But I think the future is bright. Maybe if you can continue to get Zion healthy, because when Zion was healthy, he was dominating that playing game against the Lakers. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. I'm going to give the overall grade a C, though. Next team, LA Lakers, 47-35. Kind of like the Pelicans, kind of just another LA Lakers season. I'm going to give it a C. I just think this team has kind of, like Miami in a way, kind of maxed out this roster, and they need to go and make that move, make a kind of different move to kind of change the roster a little bit, because I feel like at this point in time with the age of LeBron and what's going on, I mean, they have to go get more. I just feel like in the Western Conference, like, this team, yes, I feel like they're good enough to beat a lot of teams. They just keep on running into the same team that they can beat in the Denver Nuggets. But I just feel like they just don't have enough. I feel like when you look at this team, it's like there's so much like pressure on like an Austin Reeves to kind of give you consistent like 15 to 20 points. Same with Rui Hachimura. So we're like, they possibly have assets to go make a move to keep the core of this team and what they have already, and to try to go out and make a move to try to add some more firepower to this roster. And I think that's what they need to do. One thing I want to see them do is go get maybe a more consistent ball handler if they move off of D'Angelo Russell. I love Malcolm Brogdon's fit with this team because he can play so much better off the ball compared to D'Angelo Russell, and he's a better defender. But looking at what they need to go get a more steady guard to pair up with LeBron and Austin Reeves when it comes to playmaking and everything like that. But one thing I want to see them do that was kind of more of a smaller thing that I think they could easily address. They need to get a big for Anthony Davis. The one question I see in Anthony Davis coming off of a phenomenal year is his inconsistencies and up and downs offensively. But looking at that, if the Lakers go get a big and make AD have the ability to play more of a 4, he can get off better offensively. When you look at this Lakers roster, there is nobody off the bench that is coming in and making it easier on Anthony Davis, because he is the entire Lakers defense. They need to go get a big that can also rim protect, that can make it easier so AD can possibly get going better offensively, rather than AD having so much of the load defensively. I feel like that's why his offense is up and down at times, because you got to think Anthony Davis is tasked guarding the other team's best player most of the time. And he has to protect the rim, and he has to be the best rebounder, and he has to do this, and he has to do that. For a Lakers team that isn't really that great defensively outside of Anthony Davis, They need to go get more size to help Anthony Davis. When they won the championship, who did they have behind Anthony Davis? And who made it easier for Anthony Davis to go out there and be like, all right, AD, go out there and be the main focal point offensively. Don't even trip about the defense. We got that. Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee were both Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee. Am I missing one? No. Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, when they won the title in the bubble, gave them the size that they needed. I guess you could say Kyle Kuzma in a way too was kind of that forward spot. Gave them the bigs that they needed to have AD kind of take a load off defensively to be more aggressive offensively, if you know what I'm saying. And that's one thing I want to see them do. I'm going to give it a C, but they need to go add some more size for sure. Number 9, Sacramento Kings. Definitely a step back from the year prior. Losing in the play-in at home to the Pelicans. Injuries. Terrible timing for the injuries. This is the team when they were super successful and they were the 3 seed the year before this one. They're one of the healthiest teams in all of basketball. I think their starting 5 played like the most consecutive minutes together throughout the entire regular season with no injuries. But this one, Kevin Huerter gets hurt. That hurts your spacing a ton. He wasn't having the greatest year, but that's still a shooter that isn't crucial to your offense and what him and Sabonis do with the handoffs and everything else. So he gets hurt. Malik Monk, who was half of your scoring punch, I feel like, with this Kings team, he gets hurt towards the back half of the year, and you're probably going to lose him in free agency because you can only pay him $18 million. So he's probably going to get it back from somewhere to go play. Keegan Murray showed some great strides defensively for sure. Kind of got what I expected out of Sabonis. I feel like he had an All-NBA kind of year, same with De'Aaron Fox, but the supporting pieces kind of were lacking due to injuries. And I feel like this is a team that I felt like should have added something last year in the offseason, but this year they definitely need to add something. I feel like one thing I want to see them do is maybe go out and try to add like a Mikal Bridges, somebody that can help you on defense and offense, somebody that can do a little bit of both. And I feel like they have the assets and the draft capital to go make that work. So the official grade I have for the Sacramento Kings is a D+. I think they have a lot to do this offseason to kind of get their roster equipped and better to kind of compete with the rest of the Western Conference, because they do lose Malik Monk. That is a huge scoring piece that they're going to be missing. So they need to find a way to address that. That's the one thing I don't need to see them do, is go address that scoring need, because they're probably going to lose Malik Monk. Next team, Golden State Warriors, 46-36. I mean, this is an F. This is an F. Whenever you have somebody of the caliber of Steph Curry still having a phenomenal year at his age, and you don't make the playoffs, that's a bad year. That's a bad year. That's a failure of a year. Kind of what the Lakers are in the realm of doing with, I feel like this roster has just reached its peak. I feel like Andrew Wiggins is not the same player he once was in that championship run. I feel like, this is crazy to say, but this is the team that won a chip not too long ago, and I feel like this team has just reached its peak. Klay Thompson, I feel like, needs to change of scenery at this point in his career. Draymond Green, I mean, you could argue if he doesn't have his antics, that they're in a better position rather than being the 10 seed, because he's playing more and they're great when he's on the court compared to him being off. The one thing I do like, I still don't think it moves you above an F, is the Warriors have consistently low-key drafted very, very, very well. If you take the James Wiseman pick out of it, I know Moses Moody has had his struggles kind of finding the court, but I think Moses Moody is a really, really good player and what he can give you defensively and spacing the floor and being a great 3-and-D guard. Jonathan Kuminga has broke out this year with the appropriate playing time finally. Those two are great draft picks from the same draft. Brandon Podziemski is looking like the steal of the draft. He kind of makes somebody like a Chris Paul expendable in my eyes to kind of wash away that $30 million that he does have on his contract, because you feel safe with Podziemski really running that second unit. I feel like at this point in his career, he's just better offensively than Chris Paul, and he can give you more defensively than Chris Paul can give you. So I feel like that's an avenue that can lead to the Warriors possibly opening up some cap space. Looking at that, I think Trayce Jackson-Davis is another steal of the draft. He's been phenomenal for the Golden State Warriors and what they want to do. He's a great lob threat, and it seems like his feel for the game is so there with how the Warriors play. But with all that being said, that doesn't save their season for me. That doesn't give them a D instead of an F for me, because it still comes down to the point where, like, when you have somebody like Steph Curry and he's still playing at the caliber he's playing at his age, it's not making the playoffs is a failure of a year. It just is. One thing I want to see them do, full roster shakeup. You have to go get another scoring punch next to Steph Curry. There's times where Steph Curry is the only thing working offensively. With how inconsistent Andrew Wiggins is offensively, you know Draymond Green, that's not even his game. They need to go get a real legit scoring punch. When you look at the Western Conference, it's duos of scoring punches all throughout the Western Conference. The Golden State Warriors don't have that. They don't have that. They need to go find a way to get that. If it's a Brandon Ingram or Zach LaVine, whatever they need to do to go get that scoring punch to Steph Curry, they have to do it, and they have to do it this offseason. If not, you might as well wash your hands with the rest of Steph Curry's career. As blunt as it is, it's the truth. If you're not going to go out and make big moves to try to value the last couple of years of Steph Curry's career, you might as well wash your hands with it. As blunt as that may sound from somebody who is a Golden State Warriors fan, who has watched a lot of Golden State Warriors basketball, they need to figure out a way to try to build another championship team around Steph Curry. And if they're not going to do that in the last couple of years of Steph Curry, you might as well be looking at the future. So I'm going to give them an F. Number 11, Houston Rockets. I'm going to give it a B+. I'm going to give it a B+. The only thing holding it back from an A, if they would have made the plan, it would have been an A for me, for sure. But a whole culture-changing year, kind of what I talked about with the Minnesota Timberwolves. What the Houston Rockets have done, I feel like a lot of teams are going to start taking a page out of that playbook and adding some veteran talent around this already young core of guys and seeing them get just so much better. I don't think people understand when teams win, that's the biggest development, I feel like. Obviously, like, the reps of young players, obviously that helps a ton, but like the development and what having a winning culture can do for a young team and a young core of guys can really make you see the bright spots in their game. Like Jalen Green had a phenomenal month towards the back half of the year where you're like, oh, hold on. This is the Jalen Green that he projects to be right here. Efficient scoring, just a microwave scorer that can go give you a 20 to 30 in a hurry. That's what we were seeing towards the back half of the year. I want to say it was like the month of March. It was like towards the back half of the season where he was playing really, really well. They finished 500, and with this team, I feel like they are... Everybody talks about how, not trying to compare them to OKC, but how teams are positioned for the future. Like with the young talent, like this Houston Rockets team is so deep in young talent and draft capital that they are a team that could be in the realm of wanting to trade for a star player. They have a very, very good enticing package. They have the Brooklyn Nets pick. They have a bunch of young guys on their bench that are struggling to get into the rotation that could be valuable to another rebuilding team. So like looking at that, and they already have kind of the core founding blocks. They have a great coach in Ime Udoka. You have a veteran point guard, Fred VanVleet. Sengun is a young ascending star. You got Jalen Green, who could be a trade asset, or I think he still has a lot of potential. Jabari Smith is a perfect glue guy that can fit next to any star in the league that you wouldn't want to go trade for. One thing I want to say is get into the market for a star. One thing I want to see them do is get into the market for a star, because you have a lot of young talent that's struggling to really find a spot in the rotation. And I feel like you kind of have your young guys that you trust that you want to go with long term. But I think you have draft capital and those Brooklyn Nets picks and the picks of your own to really be in the market to try to go get a star. Like if Donovan Mitchell, Jimmy Butler, I've heard rumors about. Like they're a perfect team that's in the mix that has great packages to go out and get a star. So I'm going to give it a B+. I'm really excited for this Rockets future. Number 12, Utah Jazz. I'm going to give it a B- for this roster and this kind of like mixed bag of guys that they have on this team. There are stretches where the Utah Jazz were playing some really, really good basketball. Like I was questioning, I think John Collins had a really good year. I'm interested to see what they do with Lauri Markkanen. I think Colin Sexton had a really good year. I think he's turning into one of the more underrated guards in the league. Keontae George, I feel like he's more of a 2 guard for sure, but had a really, really good rookie year. I just like what they have. I think they have a lot of guys, a lot of young guys on their roster that aren't really fully like there yet. But like I just think they have an identity to play really good basketball. I feel like they just got to put all the pieces together. I'm gonna give it a B- because I've saw some great strides from their young guys that they do have. I think Keontae George is a staple in their franchise. I think Keontae George gives them the avenue to move off of a Jordan Clarkson this offseason. Interested to see what they do with Lauri Markkanen though. The one thing I do want to see them do is like if you're not gonna extend Lauri Markkanen, look to move off of him. You don't want to lose him for nothing next offseason. And I feel like they're to the point where, like, if they haven't extended him already, or is anything going to change to make them think they're going to do so? I think this is the draft where, like, you could possibly look to trade up and take, like, a Montez Buzelis to try to, like, kind of replace Lauri Markkanen and try to develop him and to kind of be a little bit better than what Lauri Markkanen is right now, because Montez Buzelis' potential is through the roof. But looking at this, like, if you're the one thing I want to see them do, if you're not going to extend Lauri Markkanen, look to trade him. He's a little bit older, doesn't really fit that rebuilding timeline. He's like 27, I want to say, and he could possibly give you like multiple first rounders. So don't look at that kind of like the Brooklyn Nets. Like, don't sit on your hands like a Mikal Bridges and not trade him. I think you can build around him. I think Lauri Markkanen is a great glue guy, but with the Utah Jazz, you have to go kind of draft your guy. I don't see anybody really coming to Utah that has a star realm. So I think you need to really kind of wash your hands with it and go get as much assets as you can for Lauri Markkanen, especially if you're not going to extend him. So I'm going to give it a B-. Memphis Grizzlies. Let me explain this one. I'm going to give it a B because I think it's a blessing in disguise year. You take a step back this year to take a giant leap forward. This is a team that I feel like is going to be a hungry, competitive team next year in the Western Conference. I feel like they have all the makings to really make another deep playoff push. With Ja Morant coming back, hopefully he gets healthy and gets back going. You have Triple J, Desmond Bane, who was hurt. Like, everybody was hurt on this team. You add the number 9th overall pick, which I've heard they're trying to trade up to draft down to Klingon. That could be a great front court defensively with Triple J and his versatility next to a real, true rim-protecting body and Donovan Klingon. And you're not worried about spacing because Triple J can shoot the ball. I'm going to give it a B, man. I just think this is a really, really good thing to see happen to the Grizzlies. It gave them a chance to see what kind of young talent they have on their roster, and like a Vince Williams, who is probably going to be in rotation, like a G.G. Jackson, who has shown you enough to where, like, if you were in the market to go try to trade for a star to try to pair up with this young core that you already have, G.G. Jackson could prove valuable on a trade, or he can just prove valuable on your roster in general with his versatility off your bench. So looking at that, I think they're in a great position. The one thing I want to see them do, I feel like they could be in the realm to possibly go get that another go-to guy on the perimeter. I like Desmond Bane, but I think Desmond Bane is best off ball. So when I think of this Memphis Grizzlies team, even when they were super competitive a year ago before this year, I feel like offensively is where they kind of struggle. I feel like if it's not Ja Morant, they really struggle offensively, and I feel like at times the shooting was questionable. But I feel like if they have the defensive identity, especially if they go get down to Klingon. I feel like they need to go get maybe another veteran scorer that can either come off your bench or get into the starting lineup, because you got to think you still have a Marcus Smart. So you're just because I feel like that's so small when you have Ja, Smart, Bane. I feel like that might be a little bit small, but maybe the defense of Marcus Smart could kind of neutralize that. But I don't know. I just feel like they need to go get like a bigger wing. Like, they can get into the market for like somehow, if they were like Chris Middleton's like the perfect mold. Like, he's the perfect mold of a player, somebody that can defend and go get one on his own. I feel like that's not Chris Middleton exactly, but that's somebody who I feel like they kind of need the mold of, somebody who can be that three and be able to defend and do a little bit of everything. They kind of need a Swiss Army knife. I would love to see them go into the market and get somebody like Mikal Bridges, because I think they have the assets to do so, especially draft capital-wise. And like I said, they got some young talent on that roster, so I think the Memphis Grizzlies are in a good spot this offseason. I'm going to give it a B because more so I love how bad the season was for them for the future, if that makes sense. Number 14, San Antonio. A+. This is going to be quick, short, and sweet. Rest of the roster, bad. What you saw out of Vic, that's all you needed to see. I kind of going into this, I knew the San Antonio Spurs weren't going to be good, but the whole focus was on, is Vic the hype? Is he exceeded the hype. He was in deploy conversations legit year one with a bad defensive roster in front of him. I'm going to give him an A+. I didn't even want to give it an A+++, because Victor Wembanyama is really that good. He is truly that good. He gave you everything you want to see. Now you're to the point where, like, okay, we have all the cap space, 2 first-round lottery picks, a ton of draft capital. we can go build a roster around Victor Wembanyama because we've seen it for real now. He's legit. He's the real deal. San Antonio Spurs, bad year. A+ because they have Victor Wembanyama. And they saw his development and they've seen what he can do with this bad of a roster on his own. God forbid you put the right supporting pieces around him, then I'm not shocked if the Spurs are in the playoffs next year. This is a very, very vital offseason for them. I'm going to give the season an A. Number 15, 21-61. One thing I want to see the Spurs do, go be aggressive this offseason. All I want to see them do, go be aggressive. Go be aggressive. You have a ton of cap. You have some young guys that don't really fit you anymore that you could trade. You have 2 lottery picks. Go make some moves happen this offseason because there's a world where they should be in the playoffs next year if the right moves are made. Number 15, Portland Trailblazers. 1 year of the rebuild. I'm going to give them a kind of a C. First year of the rebuild. Scoot didn't have the best start to the year. Not going to lose my mind about it or say he's a bust or anything like that, but I think Scoot Henderson is still in a prime spot to have a good career. I think this year is just rough. I feel like there's a lot going on in Portland. But first year of the rebuild, I'm going to give it a C. I like what I've seen from Shaedon Sharpe. Scoot Henderson, we just need to go into next year kind of getting him more acclimated to the NBA game. But looking at this, one thing I want to see the Portland Trailblazers do, look to move on from like a Malcolm Brogdon. I feel like you could get a first-round pick in this year's draft for Malcolm Brogdon and possibly a Robert Williams, depending on what you want to do with that. But not going to be too hard on Portland. I don't really have too much to say about Portland just because it's being year 1 of a rebuild and they got a lot going on in their roster. They don't really have a set stone direction yet. But I'm going to give it a C. I feel like I've seen some good things from their young guys over there in Portland to where I'm like, okay, I'm not going to give them an F just because Scoot Henderson didn't have the greatest rookie year. I feel like they're still year 1 of a rebuild and got to find their direction. I feel like they'll find that eventually. But that's all I have for grading the Western Conference teams based on this season. Hope you like the episode. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Helps out a ton. We're going to have a ton of content going out the rest of the summer throughout the NBA offseason and going into the NFL season as well. But thank you guys for tuning into the Barrel Talk podcast. Hope you tune in to future episodes.